So this is a project. There was a call for proposals by the Maryland DOT that was kind of open to universities within the state to apply for. And our lab, CAT lab, stands for the Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Laboratory. We're in the Civil Environmental Engineering Department at University of Maryland College Park. And we were very grateful to be awarded this project. Very important and timely project that we're going to be working on in conjunction with Peter and his team. So what I'll do today, this project is fairly new. We started back in April, so we're only a couple of months into the project. But so it's mostly an overview of what we're planning to do in this project. And then, like Reverend Screen was saying, the potential for a better future with this. And I think our lab in coordination with Maryland DOT can help make this road safer and then move to other roads within the state in Prince George's County. So in my presentation today, I'll go over some of the objectives of our project. I'll quickly just let you know about the tasks and the schedule that we're adhering to. It's an 18-month project. I'll kind of quickly go over some of the technical research tasks and how we're going to be tackling this before and after study for the countermeasures that Peter had mentioned. And then briefly mention how we are going to help train Maryland DOT folks, as well as anyone else who's interested in how to conduct these types of studies. Jump into the objectives here. So our first objective is to do a comprehensive literature review, and it's similar to what Peter had mentioned. So we're going to comb the literature to see what countermeasures out there have worked in similar scenarios. It'll actually be on an international basis, not just within the United States. So that we can discover how other people are dealing with roads with excessive speeding problems, where you've tried several other common countermeasures like enforcement and a few others that Peter had let us know when we had a kickoff meeting that had some effectiveness, but it's still not getting us to the level of safety that we want. So that's sort of what the main work so far on this project has done. We're working on drafting a literature review that summarizes all of those findings. Our second task is to explore both traditional and non-traditional data sources. So when we do traffic safety studies, the normal things that you would think of when you have speed measurements, that's always a good starting point. Crashes, in the whole scheme of things though, crashes are considered pretty rare events. So sometimes understanding the true safety, you have to look a little bit deeper into the data, things like speed variance. If people are driving at different speeds, they're changing lanes, they're following too close, and those can also lead to crashes. Within our proposal, we have partnered with a data provider. You've probably heard of them before, Michelin, the same people that make the tires, and so they're actually working with insurance companies to collect data from people's cell phones as they're driving, and they'll get event data. So if someone is over speeding, or if they're handling their phone when they're driving, or they're rapidly accelerating or decelerating, it's kind of archiving all of those events, and they'll be sending those to us. And our idea there is to get 6 months before the installation of the countermeasures that Peter mentioned, and then 6 months after, and then do an analysis to see how much change there were in things like, not only crashes and speeding, but also the rapid accelerations and decelerations. All those, we call those surrogate measures of safety in the transportation engineering realm. So that's what we'll be doing with that data. So both, like I said, a combination of this newer data and then the traditional data that we're working with Maryland DOT to get access to. We're then going to develop a framework to analyze that data. So there's going to be several different, what we call performance measures, to see how they're changing before and after the installation. They'll go ahead and apply that framework to these installations on Maryland 210, and then make recommendations on how effective they were. If there's other things to consider in the future phases of this project to keep increasing the safety. And then we're also going to be developing a plan to ensure that we transfer this knowledge to Maryland DOT and anybody else who might be interested. I think working with you all in the Indian Head Highway Area Action Committee will also be beneficial to stay in touch with you guys. I think an outreach component of this is going to be important to let the public know about this problem and what they can do to help mitigate the safety issues. I'll kind of quickly just show you, this is just a calendar of our tasks. There's a total of 8 of them. Some of them are, just doing your traditional deliverables for a project, like the final project and quarterly reports. And I talked a little bit about our plan here. We're currently doing the literature review, and we're working on some of the data that we already have access to. Some of the speed data, we have a collect speed on just about every road in the state of Maryland at our lab, and I'll show you an example of that. You may have seen it before. Then we'll do the actual analysis and then conduct or make recommendations based on that. So it's an 18-month project. We're about 2 months into it. It's due to wrap in the end of November of 2024. But I'm happy to check in with you guys either on a monthly or quarterly basis, depending on your preference there. I'm happy to keep you up to speed on where we're at with this project.
Absolutely.
So just focusing a little bit to give you a highlight of where we're working, the kind of technical tasks that we're working on. Literature review, then we have this data exploration and the development of the performance measures, then conducting before and after study, and then establish the recommendations. So you guys are probably aware of this. When we wrote our proposal, we were combing the literature and found that there's a pretty standard way to categorize and present not just for safety, but for any transportation countermeasure type of analysis. You can break them down into different categories, and you guys have already been using some of these. So we have the engineering solutions in this project with what Peter had described with the flex post and the making the lane widths a little bit more narrow are considered engineering type solutions or countermeasures. There's also technology. The automated speed enforcement would fall into this category. But there's other ones like automatic braking systems when you talk about connected and automated vehicles, which is not quite appropriate for this road just yet, but intelligent transportation systems, the enforcement. So there's automated and regular and police enforcement. We have education and outreach, and then also planning and policy. And I've been in communication with Mr. Ron Weiss, who I think is on the call, and he's been keeping me up to speed on the initiatives within the policy and planning part of things, trying to get the local legislators to become aware of this and pass some legislation so that we can have steeper fines for people that are violating the speeds in an excessive manner. So I won't go through this in great detail, but this is all of the data that we're considering bringing in for our analysis. So I mentioned all this data from the Michelin company, and that's kind of a new cutting edge data set that's I don't think has been used very much, not within my lab and probably not within Maryland DOT. But then we're also going to bring in other supplemental information like sociodemographics, U.S. Census and the American Community Survey to know more about the people's backgrounds that live around this area, but also the origins and destinations of trips that use Maryland 210. So we're actually getting that data as well. So they'll get traces of vehicles that use this road segment, and they're going to let us know what the origin and destination. So why is that important? Yes, it's very important to do outreach, I think, in the immediate area of the roadway, because people that live there are going to be using Maryland 210 and almost on a daily basis. But there also are people that don't live locally that might be using this road. And that information might give us some good insights on where we can do additional targeted outreach for the safety issue on Maryland 210. We're also going to look at land use data, if it's commercial, residential, agricultural, down toward the southern part of Maryland 210. We have data from a company called INRIX, and it's probe data that's basically from cell phones and GPS systems. And every single minute we get a speed and travel time reading on, I think there's 125 individual segments that will get a speed and time travel time reading on Maryland 210. We also have the crash data, working with state police there, and we have radar weather data so that we can tie that in to see if when it's raining or snowing, does that make the conditions even less safe. So this is actually a screenshot of a kind of rapid response ask that Ron had for us a few weeks before the proposal was actually due. We looked at some of this XD probe data and found, he was looking for some recommendations, data-based recommendations on where they may place these 3 new automated enforcement cameras to, optimize the safety situation. So we looked at both directions of travel, both northbound and southbound, and then used the probe data to say like what % of the time were the speeds above the posted speed limit of 55 miles per hour, and made our recommendations based on that data. So we'll continue to use that data for our study. Happy to take questions on it at some point. I know that we're short on time today, but that was just a sample of what we did in the past. This is a map of the countermeasures that Peter had mentioned. So they're going to be installing the flex posts south of Pine Lane to Manning Road. They're going to be putting in quick curb with flex posts 300 feet south of South Pine Drive to 200 feet north of Pine Drive, and then quick curb with flat panels 100 feet south of Livingston Road to Independence Road, 3,000 feet north of the intersection. And then they're also considering within this same general region doing lane narrowing from, I think it's currently 12 feet down to 11 feet to get people to slow down a little bit more. We've read the literature before. All these are effective ways of bringing speeds down. Will this help with these excessive speeders that are going 130, 150 miles an hour? We'll have to see that. I think that'll be a challenge for us to take a look at. So once we get these countermeasures installed is when my team will actually start digging more deeply into the data to do the analysis of before and after. So as I mentioned, we're going to be looking most likely 6 months before they do the installation, which I believe is targeted for the end of the summer, August, September. That's subject to change, obviously. And then 6 months after, we're going to use this data and see, from a statistical perspective, are the number of harsh braking and rapid acceleration events going down? Or the number of crashes going down? Is the speed variance going down? All these surrogate measures, and we're going to compare each of them before and after to see, what's happening there and how effective these countermeasures are in controlling the speeding problem. So one question I had here, and my signal cut off, so I may have missed it when we were talking to the officer from District 7. We've been trying to track down and get access to the raw automated speed enforcement camera data so that we can take a look at it. It seems like there's been some issues with data quality, but we sent out a couple emails and haven't gotten a response from the Prince George's County folks yet. So any recommendations or assistance that you could give us on tracking down that data or talking to the data vendor would be much appreciated. And then after we do our study, it'll give us some insights on giving recommendations on how to do this type of analysis, general safety analysis. It doesn't have to be necessarily just for speeding, so that this could be taken to other sites in the state of Maryland and applied and hopefully help the safety issue on a wider scale. And then eventually we'll, at the end of the project, be doing some implementation plan and training so that Maryland DOT and their partners can carry this work forward. We're happy to stay on board if there's additional funding in the future. We're hoping that we can help out with that. What our lab typically does with these projects is we develop a prototype of an online tool that automatically brings in the data so that with a few clicks of a mouse, you could say, okay, what was my safety performance metrics for this month or this week or this year? And it would automatically generate like a report and some visualizations. So we won't do that as part of this project. The budget and the time to do it isn't enough to carry that out, but we'll lay out sort of a framework, a plan on how we could do that. And that might lead on to, future projects and discussions. So that concludes sort of my high-level summary of our project and what we're aiming to do. I do appreciate the time and opportunity to come talk with you all. I'd like to stay involved with this meeting if you don't mind, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you all may have.
Okay.